Morning everyone, and thank you for tuning in. My name's Craig Sennett. Today it's Suffolk Business Life, and with me kindly is Paul Johnstone. Okay. Thanks very much for coming in, Paul.
Thank you for inviting me.
Your background is presenting skills. You know, that's largely what you're sort of involved with currently, and something I know. You know, we've never met before, but we've sort of had the odd online chat about various things, particularly recently. The art of communication, for me, seems to be dying out. You know, I think at 37, I don't know. I know a couple of younger people that are very good communicative-wise, but I think a lot of other people aren't. I don't think it's a skill being pushed enough at school, and I think it is something. I certainly didn't get it. I think it's something you tend to learn as you go on through life, and as the show is all about business, owning and running a business and stuff like that, when you make that transition from an employee into self-employed or running your own business or limited company or whatever, I think the vast majority of people are ill-equipped, presentation-wise, to make that transfer.
I think they're ill-equipped full stop, because people start a business because they've got a passion, and they're not necessarily because they're good at selling.
Or skill, yeah.
Or they're good at administration or things like that. And presentation skills and public speaking comes firmly in there. We had a chat beforehand about the demise in the ability of people to speak well in public because of the increase in things like email and for a way of communicating. And yes, those people who don't like speaking in public or don't feel comfortable
can hide behind it. Can
hide behind their email, or and even if they're getting a little bit out of the comfort zone, they might have a Skype conversation, but that's one-on-one. The ability to be able to speak to a group of people and get your point across in a way that moves the audience, whether that be move them to your particular argument or gets them to take a course of action, is a blinding skill. Because you can face to face talk to a much larger audience and get them to do what you want them to do, or give them the encouragement to be involved in something you do.
But it's ironic, it's funny, but because I know your background is public speaking, and when we did speak and I asked you to come on the show, you specifically, we were talking about things that you can do, and I highlighted something that was said to me about some of the public speaking that I've done. I said, yeah, you're good at it, content's good and all the rest of it, you tend to speak too quickly.
You do.
And ironically, you sitting here now, and I've never met you before, but I'm conscious of the pauses and slowing down, which was a conversation we had on the phone the other day.
It was, yeah.
And so thanks for that. That's my free bit of today. But I think there are very, very important elements to public speaking. There is presentation, how you look, how you feel, what vibe essentially you're giving off to the audience, content and delivery.
Yes.
Are there other areas you see, or do you think that's pretty, in a broad spectrum, that's it?
Well, in broad spectrum, I'll put it into two: content and delivery.
Yeah. Because
your technique, all the things you do, including what you wear, for example, very simple thing. If you're a woman and you're loud and proud and you're on the TV, dress down. Because some of the loud and proud patterns jar with the camera lens. And, it's not being what you are, it's being appropriate for the environment you're in. Ditto if you're on radio, sorry ladies, and you wear a lot of bangles, take them off, because that jangly noise will be picked up on microphone and the listeners can't see you, all they can hear is this little rattle in the background.
Because there's I suppose like with training, you've got audio or learning, you've got audio, visual and kinesthetic. You've got the same with your public speaking. You've got kind of how people are going to feel about you, the audio content you're delivering, and the visual aid. Be it PowerPoint or whatever. Are you a PowerPoint lover with the presentations you deliver, or horses with horses?
I like PowerPoint, but PowerPoint is badly used. There's nothing wrong with the product. It's badly used. We had a chat earlier about a chap called Professor Stephen Coslin, who's got the Coslin Institute of Behavioural Science named after him at Harvard University, and he wrote probably the best book there is on how humans interact with visual support, or a visual aid as you might call it, and that's called Clear and to the Point. And it talks about how you deliver a message with visuals behind it. We all know there are things we've all seen the things, people reading the slides and bores you to death. If you want to be thoroughly confrontational at that point, just have a word with them and say, excuse me, do you think I'm illiterate? Because you're reading this to me. I can read, I tend to be a bit more forceful with that.
But with myself, when I've used it, I've had it there as a kind of a jog, a memory hook sort of thing for me to say, just to give me a structure to follow to make sure I cover the points I have. One thing that I know we talked about in the past recently was timing. Now, and something you'd mentioned was, to me, I call it practice, but you're saying rehearse. Yeah, to me, what you were saying about rehearsing is what I do, but I call it practice. It's semantic sort of thing.
The word is the way I use the word rehearse is a much softer word. A lot of people are nervous about speaking. Practice has a hard edge to it, and practice makes them think a bit too hard. Whereas rehearsal means, well, I can do it again if it's wrong. That's the only reason we use the word rehearse.
But the thing is, though, in order to get it right, you must put in the time. These politicians that have their speeches written for them, have them edited, have every single part of them scrutinised before they're in front of you on the telly, they still practice it a lot. They don't sit there and just work off an auto cue all the time. That they need to be confident in.
Well, they will have briefed the script writer or the speech writer what they want in that. So they'll have an idea of the flow. And President Reagan had a speech writer with him for 12 years. 4 years while he was governor of California, and then the 8 years he was president. A lady called Nancy Loomis, and they got to know each other very well. So he'd say, "I want a piece on home economy, the economy in America at home at the moment, and I need it to go for about 15 minutes." It was done.
And they'd be in sync. Very much my wife. When she's helped me writing various bits and pieces, blog posts or something. We're essentially on the same page in terms of what we want to deliver. With the kind of advent of technology and other bits and pieces that are coming into it, the one bit that's not going to disappear is the fear people have of public speaking. We're not going to get away with this. I mean, I see in the future, when you're making your sales calls to a client, or you're trying to interact with a client over a problem or an issue, or even something that's gone particularly well, people can hide behind email, as we said. Yes. They can hide a phone call, essentially, but you can't read the images of the other person. I think in future with technology, faster broadband and all the rest of it, we're looking at video phone calls becoming more. At the moment, they're used for multi-purpose.
Skype is going to become popular.
At the moment, they're used for multi-purpose conferences or international interviews. Some of my clients on the recruitment side use them for. That's coming more and more into play. But I think eventually business will move to that. So people will therefore be more conscious about how they look, how they feel, and the image they present. The fear element's not going to go.
No. One of the things I do, and we spoke about off air, was that I help people overcome that fear. I teach people to speak in public. And one of the most common mistakes that I see is that people will say, right, fear is mental, which it is, so we're only going to address this mental fear. We'll talk about your inner voices and how they affect what you do. And forget completely about the practical or the delivery or technique side. And some people just focus on the technique, the 10 keys, nobody wants you to fail, all these sorts of great little tips that they give you, but they forget about the inner voices. So to do it properly, you've got to, with anything, you've got to engage both halves of this, your brain, your left and right hemisphere, put them together, show you how you overcome the fear element and how to do it properly technically. And you've got a much better opportunity for people to become more at ease. Overcoming the fear of public speaking takes a while. Guilty. I was terrified. In fact, I've just written a piece called From Self-Harm to Superhero. Because when I realised I needed help, I stood up in a boardroom, I sat down after my 5 minutes, I was absolutely awash in sweat, and I was shaking, and the chap next to me nudged me and said, "Are you alright?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're bleeding." I said, "Beg your pardon." And I'd stuck my thumbnails in here and I'd drawn blood on both fingers. And at that moment I thought, I need help.
Something you said that makes sense. When I've sat there and I've seen good presentations, I'm enjoying it. I'm relaxed, I'm calm, I'm enjoying it and taking in the information, I'm listening to what's being said and the way it's being said. When someone's dying on stage, you want them to do well.
Don't you feel for them?
Yeah, you do. It's kind of almost like, you know, you're watching, you know, your favourite football team being beaten by the arch right, you know, but you almost feel like
doing it well.
You shouldn't, yeah, you shouldn't be doing it.
No.
But you do. You kind of you have a degree of empathy for other people because, you know, probably because you've been up there yourself and you know the issues that's going into it. And I mean, boxing's a classic sport. You know, all the great boxers say, you know, if you find me a boxer that isn't scared before they go in the ring, then you found me an idiot.
Yeah.
But it's something I find. I don't find it's a natural thing for us as humans, because you are opening yourself up to terrible ridicule, terrible kind of, you know, you're bearing heart, soul, and everything, and you're doing it in front of not one person but a lot of people, some of which probably don't even know you. But as humans, we want.
It's quite interesting. I spent a lot of time working with a lady called Professor Linda Shaw, who's a cognitive neuroscientist, and I thought that the fear was all about lots of things, other than the one that it boils down to is the biggest reason people don't like speaking in public. They don't like putting their head above the parapet. We're herd instincts. We've got a herd instinct. We like being together. How many people could watch the football match at home, but you know there's 300 people going down the local pub and you're going to join the crowd and watch it down there? You go with them. So we have this thing about not wanting to stand out, not wanting to show we're different. But on the other side, your audience wants you to succeed.
What do you
because probably they don't want to put their head above the parapet, so they're very glad you've done it and they're rooting for you.
Something I've found with presentations that I've seen, you know, if you take 100% of the presentations I've seen, 2% of them are outstanding. 50% of, you know, 48% of them are probably middle of the road, and 50% of them have been god awful. But the 2%, I suppose, that I have seen that I thought actually, yeah, they've nailed it. You know, that is exceptional presentation. And I haven't spent a ton of time studying this, I'll be honest. But they're all Americans. Why?
Americans get taught how to speak at school. You got a high school in America,
okay.
And I think I'm not sure it's the last 2 or 3 years of high school, but they have a monthly public speaking class. You put a Google alert in for public speaking, and the majority of things coming back will be high school students in America whinging that they've got to go to the next public speaking class. That's point one. Point two, they've got a much more relaxed approach to the language, so they don't get hung up as much that the message they're giving is grammatically correct. They want it to be understood. And the great thing about speaking, it's not the words you use when you speak that are important. It's the meaning your audience takes away.
And very much delivery of it
yes.
as well. Yeah, it's you know how you come across. I think when you look at taking it back to local small business owners, there are a huge raft of networking groups around.
There are.
Largely more new shake stick at. Usually fairly well attended. Plenty of opportunities to do public speaking.
Yes.
Some people still avoid it.
Yep.
Some people will bite your hand off every single time, and there's a lot of people that sit in the middle. Do you find, I mean, what advice would you give someone sitting here viewing this thinking, I've got my own business, oh God, I've got to give a presentation on Thursday? You know, I mean, the first bit of advice I would give is don't leave it till Wednesday night to start your presentation. But, you know, give yourself time to change and deliver and practice or rehearse or whatever. But what is the golden bit of information you would give to someone?
Well, there are a couple of points there that you raised, Craig, which are good. Is if you're going to a networking group and you're at a networking group that has the regular 60-second slot, it's a wonderful time to perfect what you learn. There are 3 goals to any presentation. It doesn't matter whether it's 60 seconds or 60 minutes. You've got to connect and engage with your audience. You have to direct your audience's attention to what's important and only what's important. And you have to create an atmosphere where knowledge transfer can take place. Get those 3 right, you'll have a fantastic presentation. But you know, it's like anything in threes, miss one and you're not quite there. It's a bit like you've heard about this fantastic restaurant, you know, you go and you want great food, you want great atmosphere and fantastic service, miss one of them out and it doesn't quite make it. Just the same with speaking. And the beauty of public speaking is every time you master those three goals, every time you do it to those 3 goals, you deliver to those 3 goals, you'll just get better and better and better because you're conscious of what you're doing.